So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josh Heuman, and I'm the Curator of Education and Public Programs at the Power Plant Contemporary Art Gallery in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I am delighted to be participating in this program, part of Field Trip, which is a nationwide collaboration of well over 40 cultural institutions, art institutions across Canada, from coast to coast, all the way into the north, certainly Yukon, and always looking to add a few more partners to the mix. Today, I'll be in conversation with Skeena Reece, an artist based in British Columbia. So by way of introduction, Skeena Reece is a Tsimshian Gitksan and Cree artist based on the west coast of British Columbia. She has garnered national and international attention, most notably for Raven on the Colonial Fleet from 2010, a bold installation and performance work presented as part of the celebrated group exhibition Beat Nation, which I believe started in Vancouver, but then traveled to a few venues, including the Power Plant in Toronto. Her multidisciplinary practice includes performance art, spoken word, humor, sacred clowning, writing, singing, songwriting, video, and visual art. There's much, much more to say about Skeena Reece, and so I will invite her into the conversation so that we can engage with some questions that I have. And again, I invite members of our online audience to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens if you have any questions and would like to join in. So Skeena, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. Oh, if you could unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Awesome, we can hear you now. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining me today for this field trip conversation.
Oh, you're welcome. It was very difficult to wake up early and to put some clothes on.
I know these days during the pandemic, the commute from work for me is about 20 feet.
Yep.
Which has pros and cons, no commute, but work seems ever present. I assume as an artist though, you live with your creativity, and so you're not really sort of like differentiating much between work and life quite as much.
Or at all.
Or at all, exactly. So I wonder, I have just a few questions for you.
Sure.
And they're big, broad, open-ended questions. And then perhaps our audience will have a few more questions to add to the mix. So I wonder, so many people are interested in how artists, become artists. And so I wonder if you could start by teaching us, or by sharing with us rather, what led you to become an artist and how you've chosen this very broad range of media that you work in.
I wish I could answer that question. I don't really know how I got into art. I basically think it's a language that I created and was informed by the people around me, and felt like I basically needed to come up with a way to explain what was happening in my body and what I was seeing. Yeah, I don't know if I didn't claim very early that I was an artist. I think it just kind of was something that you feel you have to do, like call yourself something to feel like you're going somewhere. I remember sitting in a cafe in Vancouver, and this older dude with scraggy white hair and kind of like, I think he had paint on his pants, and he was sitting there cross-legged and staring at me, and I had like a homemade skirt on and like some cracky blue, like nail polish. And he said, what do you do? And I just was like feeling random. So it's like, I'm an artist. And he goes, well, at least you have cracked blue nail polish. And I just felt like such a small person in that moment. I don't think that he meant to diminish me as much as he did. But I think that there's a competitiveness about it now that I don't really enjoy. And I'm really, really honored and I'm lucky that people want to see what I'm making. And I'm very grateful for that. But it feels like breathing to me. It always felt like something that I had to do to be okay. So yeah, I'm Native. So, you know, we struggle with mental health issues and, you know, and I think it was just something that made me feel really whole. And of course I found a community. We find a community and of like-minded people and sometimes not. But
and you mentioned sort of like a certain competitiveness. Perhaps expand a little bit on that. What do you mean by that?
Well, you work at the power plant. You could probably explain it a bit better than I can. I just, there's a lot of edging and, you know, trying to find the right communities and knowing the right people and selling to the right galleries and, you know, showing and I know a lot of people that don't get any support or attention, not just because they don't seek it, but because they don't fit into the mold of what's saleable. So, you know, unfortunately, I had to kind of switch gears when I had a kid, like 9 years ago. And it just felt a little bit safer in terms of being able to contribute by videotaping, you know, what I was doing. So I made some art videos and that was the way that I could join in what people were asking of me. Yeah, it's just evolved. It's just an ever evolving thing for me. But
yeah, and you cover such a broad range in terms of media.
Well, it started with being born to a carver for a father and his community being a group of visual artists. And the people around me were constantly making and thinking about making art. So that influenced me greatly.
So speaking of which, I think that's the perfect springboard to ask who were some of the artists that you were looking at and inspired by as youngsters, and when you were studying at the Emily Carr Institute of Art and Design?
Oh, I would have to say I was influenced by some of my peers. I was influenced by my dad's friends, Henry Green and Dempsey Bob and Ron Tellick and Robert Davidson and just a ton of mask makers and carvers really influenced me a lot. And then as I grew up, I naturally gravitated towards artists. So Gwyden Shaw and Alida Kinney-Starr, and she kind of was like, wow, you're a great spoken word artist. I'm like, what's that? Tell me more about that. And so we collaborated a little bit, and there were just a ton of Native artists that were coming out of the woodwork in Vancouver that we all collabed and managed to make a bunch of things happen. We put our foot down a few times politically and opened a lot of doors for a lot of people. And it's been a long-lasting contribution as a whole. The late David Dennis passed away, and he was one of the early members of the Native Youth Movement, which I was part of in Vancouver. And we demanded to have a seat at the table in where things affected us. And we ended up getting a lot of funding into the Vancouver community and took it and ran. Kelly Larondale started the Kaya, Knowledgeable Aboriginal Youth Association, and he hired me to do some art stuff, and I created an offshoot called the Native Youth Artist Collective, which ran for a couple of years. As you know, Arts Admin has a lot of burnout, so you can imagine Native youth juggling racism and addiction and homelessness have a hard time keeping the ball in the air. So, you know, we do what we can. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that speaks volumes about the art sector as a whole, and certainly, you know, looking at and thinking specifically about, you know, these added challenges, obstacles that have been forced upon Canada's Indigenous across the board. And so I wonder, along those lines, what would you say? What would you say about the idea of your art making perhaps deepening your sense of or connection with, you know, the Indigenous community where you live, but perhaps across the nation, and maybe just the idea of sort of like really being deeply rooted in the Indigenous community?
Oh, I don't even think they know I'm alive. Well, once you move to the city, you know, you are far removed from your traditional roles. I was born and raised in Prince Rupert, and it's very hierarchical. So a lot of people hold high titles, and it entitles them to be leaders. And you know, my great grandmother was a chief in Hazelton, but I'm so far removed from that whole kind of process that you're really asked to, you know, be a leader, and they choose who's been around, and we haven't really been around.
Mm-hmm.
So I pieced together, like many Native people, a sense of entitlement to our indigeneity, and we swim upstream when it comes to how people view Indigenous people now. It's just kind of like, how are they Native? Even my own family member says, if you don't do Native things, you're not Native. So, you know, identity politics is prevalent in all communities, whether you're identifying as an artist or, you know, if you're Métis somewhere and you don't know how entitled you should be.
Mm-hmm.
So I take from what I have been taught, and I feel like I know it's my nativeness is in my DNA, and I can't deny that.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of actually physically making Native traditional art and stuff like that, I would have to say that it's a real I guess evolution. It's still there, and a lot of my work to this day talks about those shadows of the past. It's still there. It's just not chug life, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And to all the homies out there struggling,
Mm-hmm.
I just find that we need to make room. There should be, you know, a carving school. There should be, you know, Native art museums run by Native people.
Mm-hmm.
There should be, there should, but there's just so much work to be done. And like, we can't even breathe right now. I can't imagine how many people out there, how can you function and make art and you literally cannot breathe physically in the smoke?
Yeah, I mean, and that's, you know, like layers of notions of cannot breathe, I can't breathe, connected to the Black Lives Matter movement for sure, connected to wildfires in forest lands. You know, the very core and the crux of nature is on fire in places.
Yeah, I'm right in it right now.
Right, or being clear cut.
Well, the COVID-19 is just psychotic. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we need each other so bad, and I just feel like that part, my spirit can't breathe either. So I think that, yeah, I don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I think these times are extraordinary. Uh, and so I wonder, you know, uh, self-deprecation aside, do you sort of perceive a place for your work in the broader context of art in Canada, in the broader context of, you know, what we could say in a broad, vaguely defined term of Indigenous art in Canada, or even globally? Like, is that like how do you feel your work connects with those broader sort of categories?
Are you asking me if I think I measure up?
No, less about quality and more about you know, shared themes, concerns, conflicting themes or concerns,
Oh,
uh,
there's so much.
affiliations with, you know, any particular artists or other
Oh,
you know,
wow.
makers out there.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff there to unpack.
I like to say
I've been
I
on,
don't ask easy questions.
okay, I've been on Facebook for 10 years and I have 2 kids. And so what are the people doing now? I have no idea. Back in the day, of course, I have a really crappy memory, so name dropping is not my strength. I can remember the most important people in my lives, but um, the
Uh,
world, what's the
I,
world up to? Well,
I wonder. Yeah, I mean,
there's a
I
lot of amazing Maori artists out there that are killing it, and Australian. And when I went to the Biennale of Sydney, which is where Raven on the Colonial Fleet originated, it wasn't firstly a part of Beat Nation. That was kind of a secondary visual art kind of show, but it was a performance, and the regalia and the photograph are what joined Beat Nation. So the residual sort of effects of the performance. But yeah, when I went to the Biennale, it was just centered on Indigenous artists, and it was hugely shocking almost. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm any kind of pro artist that's, you know, hanging out at all the modern contemporary places. I don't really know what everybody's up to, but just to see the adaptation of their Indigenous language
mhm.
into physical art and performance art and visual art, it was incredible. I just was like thinking I'm a part of something pretty special. Um, as a whole, Indigenous people are almost invisible in this country, in America. And it sucks because we're really brilliant, you know, and you can see some of the, you can see a lot of it in like my mentor's work, Dana Claxton. She's widely known and has championed our artist practices through her photography and stuff. And it's just like, thank God somebody's there to help us become more visual, because what we're doing is incredible. Like the music coming out of the Snotty Nose Res Kids and oh, who's that guy? Bear. He does the dance music that everybody's into.
Oh, is it like a
How
tribe called Red?
Yeah, like those kind of guys are amazing, and they're what's visual, but what's lying underneath is even more rich
Mhm.
if it was just known. So we've got, you know, where our works intersects, a lot of it is retained for us, for our spirit, and it's not eligible to be seen, heard, or understood by others. And so that part, I mean, we literally just need support to be healthy, so that we can continue this incredible kind of spiritual undertone that I think affects the world. I'm pretty sure it affects the world, our prayers and our way of life. So even though it's not massively understood what we're doing, I think it's important to look into so that you could support it and
Right. Yeah,
and
no,
be
absolutely.
enriched by it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in large part that's partly what has motivated us not only to reach out to you, but additional Indigenous artists to really try to feature Indigenous artists in this field trip platform, to really have as broad a voice as possible.
Sure.
And so I think that really gives rise to the last question I have, and we do have a question from an audience member as well. But my last question is about the current pandemic. So we've touched upon it, but I wonder, what has it been like for you to sort of like be living and working in this period? And has this, do you think it has or will affect sort of the subjects or the themes that you deal with in your artwork?
I would have to say, firstly, I'm a parent, and that is pretty new. And so the place that I'm at, you'll see a lot of my work. It talks about nurturing and talks about care. And so that's sort of what I focus on mostly. And you can see it through all my work, and the idea of transference of knowledge. And so I kind of have a few kind of what I feel like are epic pieces that I want to leave behind. We're not here forever. So I'm kind of like, well, what could be more lasting? So I wanted this like painting to be done, and some bigger photographs infused with some of the political thoughts of my colleagues, like Gord Hill. And so what was the question? Sorry.
If like what it's been like living through this pandemic.
Oh yeah,
and if you think
well, I have
will
kids.
affect your work. Yeah.
I have kids, and so you can't really work unless you're working with the kids. But I actually want to write a children's book, and so I'll be working with the guy who made my painting, Colin Elder, and I'm really excited about it. I feel like there's a real lack of pulp for kids, Indigenous kids, and otherwise. I really can't wait, actually. I'm really excited. So I'm doing that, and I'm making a video for Dana Claxton and Janine Frey and Jutely, who's part of a collective called the Ishi Collective, and that should be done soon. I think it'll be a feature. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to tell, actually. Okay, so I'm working on a film.
Well, stay tuned.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually the question that was submitted from our audience is, what are you currently working on?
Yeah, I might work on an actual film. I might use 16 mil. So I've worked with Pete Haig before, and we made some vignettes, and they're really successful, and I feel really good about them. It's a triptych that's currently being shown at the Comox Valley Art Gallery, and I think it's been shown a few other times. Oh yeah, I had a solo show called Sweetgrass and Honey at the Helen Belkin Gallery, and it just feels like a little bookend to the video that I made with Sandra Semchuk called Touch Me for the Canada's Residential School Art Show that was at the Belkin back in 2000 and I want to say 13, but I could be wrong, could be 15. But yeah, I'm interested in making some books and making some films.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I truly appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
I think these are strange times. Normally, the power plant all the programming happens at the power plant. And this has really been an opportunity for us to be able to reach out, as far as all the way on the other side of the country to where you are, to sort of, get a sense of who's been working on what, and what these social and political times have plopped on our plates. So we really appreciate touching base with you, hearing your insights, which I think are so profound and should be heard by others, about the connections that have been severed among and between the Indigenous and traditional territories and each other. Let us all hope that the world improves with each passing day. So
yeah, I feel like I'm at a funeral for the world.
yeah, some days it definitely feels heavier than other days.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be kind. That's all.
Exactly.
That's all.
Be kind to others, be kind to the self.
Just be honest with my art. Just trying to be honest. That's
awesome.
it.
Well, we will look forward to, seeing books with your name on the cover, and films on screens everywhere. Again, thank you so much, Skeena, for taking time to speak with us. And just for those who have tuned in, the Power Plant's next field trip program will be on October 7th with Sean Hunt, who is an artist, also based in the Vancouver area, as somewhat of a preview of his show that will open at the Equinox Gallery. So once again, thank you so much, and have a great afternoon.